The crowd pours out of the amphitheater onto the misty streets of southern Spain. With a clank, the gate locks behind us and the theater dims. I stare at the darkened stage where the songs of the great gypsy singer El Terremoto still resound in the empty auditorium, and the images of flamenco dancers twirl like ghosts in the black night. When I turn towards the streets to catch a cab to the hotel, the sidewalks are already empty. Where did everyone go? The chattering voices have died away and not one taxi remains. I am lost, completely alone on a corner in Cadiz, Spain, in the middle of the night. I walk in search of a telephone, frightened, miles from my rented hotel room. For a moment, I think I hear footsteps, but they are washed away into the sound of the sea. So I turn to Carlos Peña. The guy, the character who brought me here. He is invisible, without skin, but has become a part of my life as alive to me as my husband and daughter. It is because of Carlos Peña that I travel miles alone and spend thousands of dollars on a journey into Andalusia to see flamenco and gypsies firsthand. It is for Carlos that I'm standing in the damp night. For him, I listen to El Terremoto sing out. It is Carlos Peña who has turned my life into an obsession with flamenco. Okay, this is your town, Carlos. Take me to Calle Marquez, back to the hotel. He says, don't worry. I know these streets like the lines in my hands, the ones that can tell fortunes. I can feel his presence near me as I have in all the years I wrote A Song Between Lives. I follow him in blind faith down the Cadiz streets. He tells me he will protect me and there's no need to worry. I'll get back safely. Walk like a blind man at the hands of God. Just follow where I take you. I will tell you when to turn left or right. Okay, Carlos. My footsteps travel across the silent avenues. A car or two passes, but I keep my head pointed forward, trusting his guidance. It takes time, but soon I recognize the intersections of roads, a familiar streetlight, and the arches that mark the boulevard only blocks from my hotel. I'm delighted, but not surprised. I have learned to trust Carlos Peña. When Carlos first comes to me, it is a June morning as I scribble in my journal. As I write, I hear his voice full of breath, like a wind that is pushed between teeth as it directs my hand. I am Carlos Peña. I lived in Cadiz, the town I loved, and I want you to tell his story. It's a man speaking, insistent. I have written stories before, but no character has come like this with the power and presence of a real person. Cadiz? Where's that? Spain. I was a gypsy, a singer of songs. Now I'm an angel of death. My hand moves furiously to capture his words. An angel of death, I ask him? He senses my fear and he chuckles. Don't be afraid. I just want to tell you a story. It's a laugh that's both sinister and childlike, and I come to know it well. Your story? Yeah. I'm like tijeras, like scissors, that cut through people's life and shred them apart. He frightens me. I want no part of it. You sound dangerous. I don't want you here if you're dangerous. He says I was dangerous once, but now I'm seeking redemption. Redemption? He tells me how he died alone as he begged for forgiveness in the snow-filled Andalusian mountains. He tells me he wants to start again and break free from the past. He tells me that he needs to share his story, and only through that can he begin again. He asks if I will only listen, and he will speak. Just let the words come through my hands, and he will do the work. Good deal, I think. Although I've written for many years, I'm not fully practiced at this. I'm both afraid and intrigued, and I can feel his heart beat, and even the presence of his sex imposing, almost threatening. So, girl, will you? Yes. I write for an hour as the story begins, and the next day I write for 2. His story comes out a little at a time, with anecdotes here and there about a gypsy growing up in the late 1800s whose life was tragic as he chose death over love. In weeks, the first draft comes out on napkins, torn grocery bags, lined paper, in fragmented clusters and disconnected storylines. One day, instead of writing, I decide to watch television. Carlos says, "You're running from me." You do this, don't you? Run from your own soul. You remind me of the shallow people who would pay me for my songs, but then abandon me to my own death. Psst, you are like them, he says, aren't you? I'm tired, Carlos. I need to relax. You know, I work for a living. Relax with that little black box? I sink into the couch, put my feet up, and then the television explodes. Right there and then, the tube completely shatters. I begin to shake. When I call to my husband, he assures me, the television's old, honey. It was just a matter of time. I think it was my character, I say. It was Carlos Pena. My husband rolls his eyes. The television was old. I'll bring it to the shop. Was it the television or was it Carlos? Who knows? But synchronicities like this appear more and more frequently in the days I write a story. When Carlos is in my life, I feel a magic so profound that I learn to respect his requests, and he shows up in chairs everywhere I go. And we find ways to reach compromises. Working with him is an act of devotion for which I expect nothing in return except his trust. As I earn it, I get the joy of his story. He tells me to cover the clocks in my house. I'm too preoccupied with schedules. He says that creativity is timeless. He tells me to read Federico Garcia Lorca. Carlos introduces me to places I never knew existed. He guides my hand through maps and atlases to small towns, valleys, and mountain ranges. Carlos tells me about the life of gypsies and the spirit and changing face of flamenco in his day. Carlos taught me of a culture and a time, and of a woman he loved and a man he murdered. Carlos tells me of his grandmother who was beaten and tried in front of a gypsy court for infidelity. He tells me he was born in Jerez from a family of singers. Detail after detail crafts a world that is uniquely his. And when I read to verify the facts, most of them check out. So when Carlos Pena asked me to go to Spain, I cannot refuse. I follow him to his homeland.